In our previous walkthrough, we took a look at GitHub Actions and we looked at continuous integration. That is, adding code, uploading it to the server, running an action, and testing that code continuously on every subsequent push back up to the server. I'm now going to take a look at how to do continuous deployment, and the deployment target is going to be a machine on DigitalOcean. And you can see here the steps that I have on the left-hand side. And I started out by creating some new keys using SSH key gen. Now, after I did that, I created a vanilla Ubuntu machine. And I'm going to go ahead and show you here that I selected 18. I went with the recommended size of droplet. I'm only going to keep it around for a little bit anyway. Then I selected New York 3. And then when it came down to my keys down here at the bottom, this is the key down here where you see after select all, the get to do was the key that I selected, the new key that I have already uploaded at this point. And then I also selected my own in case I wanted to get additional access. So after that, I created my machine, and you can see here the machine, if we go back to the drop list, the machine that I created, and I called it appropriately GitHub Actions. And this is the IP that I was given. Now, once I had my machine, I went ahead and logged into the machine using the new keys. And as you can see here, I went ahead and installed Nginx. So these steps are nothing to do with continuous deployment. It's just what I selected. I wanted to do a continuous deployment onto an HTTP server. And as you can see there, I selected Nginx. And so these steps here, install Nginx, adjust the firewall, and checking that the server is up and running have to do with that. And now I can go ahead and show you here, if I take the IP and we navigate to the browser, well, actually we can go ahead and do it here. We should be able to see that we are in fact at Nginx. Now at this point, we need to navigate back to GitHub, and this is the project that we were working on, cogs.io acto. And I added a number of secrets. And the reason for this is that I'm going to leverage these secrets once I write my workflow YAML file. And as you can see here, I added a host. The host in this case is our IP, so your IP of your VM. Then I have the port number, which in this case is going to be SSH, because I want to connect to that VM via SSH and upload those new files. Then I have here my SSH key, and that is the one that I created for this specific instance here. And then the username, which in this case is root, logging into the machine. Now, if you were going to do this more formally, you would create additional users, but this is simply a proof of concept. Now, at this point, I went ahead and moved back, and I'm going to go ahead and show you here the workflow that I wrote. And as you can see here, it's DO YAML for DigitalOcean. And a lot of the code here in the comments come from the boilerplate. I used the GUI that allowed me or gave me some starter code when it came to creating my action. And as you can see here, I gave it the name of CD. I selected to only run when it's pushed into master. And then you can see here, I start to define my build, and I get a hold of the actions context. Then echo, and this is just part of the boilerplate that was part of the initial workflow. But the part that I added is down here, and I'm referencing one of the actions that has been written by another member of the GitHub community, and that allows you to do an SSH call. Now, the environment here is using the following, and you can see those that are match up against the ones that I defined in the secrets. And that's all the information that I have provided for that specific VM and the keys that I'm using for that VM. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and copy over the source, that is the contents of this project, onto the target, which is the path within my VM in DigitalOcean. And I'm simply going to go ahead and add that as you see there. So after this, I went ahead and let me go ahead and set my font to something more visible. I went ahead and ran my code, and you can see here the last run, and I'm going to go ahead and check, and I believe it should be this. And you can see here copy file via SCP. You can see there some of what that test wants. Ultimately, it executed and transferred all data to the host. And if I were to navigate to the machine, as you can see here, I am in fact within that machine. Let me go ahead and exit simply to emphasize the point. And I'm going to go ahead and cd to the directory. We'd be able to see, and let me go ahead and go back to the code here, the contents of the code here now having been copied over to this machine in DigitalOcean. And if we navigate to hello.html, we'd see there the code, which is very much the same code. And in fact, you can see here the hello world, which is what I'm writing to the console from JavaScript on this specific page. So as you can see, this is a pretty smooth process. I was surprised by the fact that it worked on the first time. I guess I I pressed all the right buttons and I had all the right information. I would expect it to at least one thing not have worked, but it looks like I got everything right. So this seems to be a pretty easy way to do continuous deployment. And having done our previous step with continuous integration, you can see here how you could couple these. Now this is specific, of course, to DigitalOcean, but there are other workflows that have been written already for the common platforms, which would be AWS, Azure, and GCP. So this one, in fact, here, if we go back to our code, well, I no longer have it up, but if we go back to our code, it's actually using SSH. So if you were to run a VM on any other platform, you wouldn't have to change the code. You'd simply have to change the credentials and the IP. So with that, I think this has been a pretty pleasant experience, and now it's your turn to try.